Today we look at 4 real paranormal encounters that will have you questioning what you know about reality. Without further ado, let's hop right into our first story. For context, my dad grew up on dairy farms with his parents, who worked for a guy who owned multiple farms, so they would hop around to different farms and manage them, so to speak. Also, we live in Australia. Anyway, while my dad was in his late teens to early 20s, they lived in this house that eventually became known as the spooky house to him and his parents, and this what they experienced while living there. The house was known to have a very foreboding feeling to it, like something was always off and you couldn't put your finger on it. Floor was made out of old wood that had little notches in it, and Nan, Dad's mum, put little stoppers in them to fill the holes. A lot of the time they would wake up in the morning and find that all of the stoppers were pushed up from underneath the house. Dad said they had these giant-ass hippie beads hanging in the doorways, so big and heavy that it would have to be a big gust of wind to move them. He lost count how many times he would get up early for work or such and find them swaying, like someone walked through them, but when he checked the bedrooms, everyone was asleep. I remember Dad telling me that it slowly got worse over time, like the house didn't want them there or something. At one point, Nan contacted a psychic to see if they could make it better or calm it down. Well, the psychic wouldn't even get out of her car and come up the driveway. Absolutely refused to come inside the house. Nan was left flabbergasted and asked what she could do. The psychic told her to move house and drove off. Dad said not long after that these things would start stalking the house. To this day he has no idea what they were and he doesn't really want to know. Nan would come out in the morning, find that the grass was pressed down or trampled around the house, especially where the windows are. Her peg basket on the clothesline would be ripped to shreds and bits of it spread around. Dad said she would get the shits because she had to keep buying new ones, haha. It started to get more serious when Dad would be woken up by scratching at his window on the outside. He was always too scared to look back at it, because he knew whatever it was staring right back at him while scratching the window. They would check at morning to find that the paint had been scratched off the house at around human height and grass flattened. At one point, while his dad was out working a few paddocks over, Nan came in and woke Dad up, and together they huddled in his bedroom waiting for daylight as the thing stalked around the outside of the house. Speaking of, it stalked Dad once too. He was walking from the house to his dad, a few paddocks over to help with the cows, about 4 a.m.-ish. It was a cold and there was frost on the grass. As Dad was walking, he could hear a crunch, crunch coming behind him. So he stopped, and it stopped too. Dad was like, huh, and started walking again, and so did it. Again, Dad stopped, and it stopped. Now starting to get freaked out, Dad's starting to pick up the pace, and he stopped again. Only this time it didn't stop, but started to come right at Dad. Dad fucking bolted, ran over 2 paddocks and cleared the fences. Didn't stop till he reached his dad's side. Whenever Dad's parents left for a couple of days and he had the place to himself, Dad would host massive parties with his friends. They had the run of the house and could sleep wherever they wanted, but all of them always end up huddling up in one room when they went to sleep. One time, it was just Dad and his cousin over. They played a game of pool and drank. At one point, around midnight, the both of them were sitting around and heavily drink. A dark figure appeared and said, "Go to bed." Dad said he was pissed drunk and thought, why the hell not? And they went to bed. The next morning, they woke up to find the game of pool that was left unfinished put away, and his cousin asked who that person was that was standing over their beds watching them sleeping. But Dad didn't remember that part. Dad and his parents moved out and someone else eventually moved in. Not long after that, the house burned down. Dad didn't know what caused the fire, but he was sure as heck happy about it. Our next story takes us to the land of enchantment, New Mexico. Let's hop right in. My husband and I stayed at a super old hotel in Santa Fe, New Mexico. At the time, I did not really believe in paranormal things or ghosts, mainly because nothing had ever happened to me. The old room we were staying in had this decorative wooden chair that had a slanted seat. I took note of the slant because I wound up putting my computer bag on this chair and felt comfortable doing so. I'm super careful with my electronics, and the slanted seat made it so my bag slid all the way back into the back of the chair so it couldn't fall. I also hung a nice new dress on the back of the chair. We went out for sightseeing, and when we came back, my dress was on the floor near the chair. I wondered if housekeeping had touched it, even though we had do not disturb on our door all day and the room had not been serviced. Oh well, we ordered in some dinner and went to bed. My husband and I were laying in bed in the dark talking, almost falling asleep, when suddenly we hear a super loud slam. It was so loud we shot awake and turned on the light. There on the other side of the room, a good 10 or 15 feet from the chair, was my computer bag. It was like someone had lifted it and threw it down. There's no way it just fell off the chair that far away, and the chair seat was slanted backwards toward the wall. It would be hard for anything to just fall off it, especially forward and 15 feet away. And it was a slam to the ground. I was so terrified, but my husband just shrugged like, guess this place is haunted like a lot of places in Santa Fe. Guess the ghost doesn't like stuff on its chair. I demanded we sleep with a light on. I didn't even have the courage to check if my computer was okay until the next day. The next morning, my husband asked the front desk if the hotel was known to be haunted, and the guy just laughed and said, "Oh, what? Did you see the little girl?" Now let's move on to our next haunting experience. I used to work for one of my university's departments that got moved into the empty building on campus. They decided they needed our former space in a relatively full building used mostly for gen ed classes for another department that they were creating. So we got moved to the old library, which hadn't housed a department full-time since like 2006. This was 2017. Anyways, most of the building has been remodeled. The only part that remains of the library are the old stacks, 5 levels of them. Most of the books in there were moved when the library was moved about 50 years ago, and most of the rest were put in the university archives for storage, but not all of them. Some extremely old, outdated books never left, and these had come from the original library in campus, which was located in what was the only building in the university for the first 40 years it existed. The university's first librarian was hugely dedicated. Our current library is named after her. She died in 1921, and she's said to still inhabit the books or something. Moving in, being a kid from the area and a huge fan of this university, I knew the stories, never believed the legends. Some professors refused to work there. Doors would slam shut, papers and books flying off shelves, cold chills randomly throughout the place. We moved in with no fanfare and no issues. But the old stacks were undergoing some renovations, and while normally locked and strictly off-limit to students, you could get in every once in a while. Naturally, I did. Mostly out of curiosity, just to see what was in there. Last day of finals week, I decided to look around. May 2018. Still had 2 years working there, so figured I'd get acclimated to the building. Wandering into the basement, the lowest level of the stacks is unlocked, so naturally, I went in, just to check things out and see. First and foremost, the lights crackled on. They weren't stable and flickered a lot, and it was hot. The ventilation in this building was ass back then on the floors with people in them, and it's no better now. So it's hot and stuffy, and walking into the main stacks, the lights are no better. Spotty, very warm. Lots of odd noises all over the place, ancient books and forgotten small fossils of shells and tree twigs and stuff from the geology department. I had to be the only person left in the building by this point. It was about 5:30 p.m. as the semester was ending, so I wasn't going to be found. But it was uneasy. I didn't feel like I should be there. Moreover, I felt like something didn't want me there. It's nothing I'd ever felt before or since. It got more and more powerful across the whole time I was in there, just looking around, peering at books, picking up old rocks, the like. And then the air as I'm standing still goes ice cold. No particular reason why, there's no air vents nearby. But I felt the temperature drop, and then it stops. I heard a loud bang of a source I still can't figure out, and that was it. I was out of there in seconds. I do not believe in paranormal stuff. I do not believe in aliens, ghosts, whatever. But I still don't know how to explain what happened that day. It's one of the strangest things I've ever had happen. And now for our last story. So me and my buddy are 14-ish. We are sitting in his living room playing Pokemon and watching TV. When out of the blue, his sister, who was 15, comes running in the room crying like a 3-year-old who dropped her ice cream cone. After a short time, she calms down enough to get us to follow her into her room. She was in an AP flute class and had to record herself playing some music. She had left the record button playing, and in that blank space, she had recorded a clear-as-day young female screaming. Now, this was not a ghost story's random bit of sound, this was obviously a young female screaming. He had a big fenced yard, and next to her room was the garage. There was no way someone outside of the house could have screamed and been recorded that clear. His sister did not sleep in that room for 6 months. She deleted that recording that night to our great disappointment. That's all we have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Got any strange encounters of your own? Share them in the comments. Links in description. Don't forget to subscribe to OK Dream Life.
You made a big mistake walking into my domain. Were you even thinking when you decided to confront a god? You thought you were sleek, but you are feeble and weak. I will send you up the creek. It will be my treat to beat you to a pulp. I can hear your gulp. Welcome to my world. Welcome to my world. How dare you threaten a god? Who are you? You are nothing. You thought you were sleek, but you are feeble and weak. I will send you up the creek, looking a little bleak for you. I will make you into a stew. How dare you threaten a god? Who are you?